South Florida rapper XXXTentacion and the moments leading up to it.
This is the hospital footage that has the entire hip-hop world talking. After years of speculation, a new video claiming to show XXXTentacion's final moments has surfaced, and it's deeply unsettling. What happened inside that hospital room will shock you, and the questions it raises about his death are even darker. In this video, we're unpacking the hospital footage they tried to hide, the inconsistencies in the timeline, and why the full truth behind XXXTentacion's final hours might still be out there. Let's dive into it.
Surveillance cameras captured the ambush of rapper XXXTentacion as he prepared to leave a Deerfield Beach motorcycle dealership last June.
The final day, on June 18th, 2018, what began as an ordinary Florida afternoon turned into one of the most scrutinized moments in modern music history. Jose Dwayne Onfroy, XXXTentacion, had left Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach just hours after announcing a new charitable idea to fans. He slipped quietly into his black BMW i8, likely unaware he was being watched. Surveillance footage and witness statements later revealed a dark SUV trailing him as he pulled out of the lot. At around 3:56 p.m., two armed men exited the SUV and confronted X while he was still in his car. They demanded a Louis Vuitton bag, reportedly holding $50,000 in cash, a sum that would later become a central detail in the case. There was a brief exchange. Some witnesses claimed they heard him struggle, perhaps reaching for something, perhaps resisting. Then gunfire. Multiple shots rang out. In the chaos, the bag was snatched and the men fled in their dark SUV. Paramedics arrived minutes later. X was still slumped in the driver's seat, unresponsive, bleeding. He was rushed to Broward Health North, declared a level 1 trauma case. In the emergency room, efforts were made. Chest compressions, intubation, attempts to stabilize him, but he had sustained fatal wounds. At approximately 5:30 p.m., local authorities confirmed his pronouncement dead. Investigators later pieced together the timeline. They believe Dedrick Williams orchestrated the robbery, following X from the bank to the motorcycle dealership. Williams, along with Robert Allen, had entered the shop before the confrontation. Allen reportedly tried to dissuade the others. Williams was arrested just 2 days later on a first-degree murder charge. Allen was arrested shortly afterward and eventually accepted a plea deal, cooperating with prosecutors. The case's velocity was immediate. Surveillance footage, financial trails, cell phone pings, the evidence grew fast. Still, questions remain. Why target X specifically? He had become a polarizing figure, loved and hated, powerful and vulnerable. Was it random opportunism? A calculated hit? The narrative split, just as it often had in his lifetime. And as the world learned of the viral hospital footage weeks later, that quiet, ghostly image in the bed would come to rewrite how we see this final day. What unfolded in the ER wasn't just a coda to the shooting. It was an opening, a question, a demand for answers that many still seek.
This morning, 4 men have been charged with the murder and the death of up-and-coming rap star XXXTentacion, but 2 of the suspects are still on the run this morning.
The rise and the Raj. Jose Dwayne Onfroy was born in Plantation, Florida in January 1998. His childhood would be marked by hardship, loss, and conflict. At times, living with his grandmother, his father jailed, and his mother struggling. X's formative years were fractured. As a teenager, he bounced between schools, frequently in trouble, often cut loose by institutions that labeled him disruptive rather than broken. By 2013, Onfroy turned to music. Fresh from juvenile detention, he began uploading tracks on SoundCloud, raw, experimental, genre blurring. He adopted the name XXXTentacion, drawing from Spanish roots, tentacion meaning temptation, as a symbolic expression of inner conflict. He formed the collective Members Only, a loose alliance of misfits, artists, and fans who felt alienated by mainstream rap. Through Members Only, X cultivated a direct bond with listeners. No polished PR, just scars, vulnerability, and chaos. His breakout hit came in 2016 with Look at Me, distorted, aggressive, abrasive, unfiltered. That song didn't just go viral, it detonated. Within underground rap circles and across social media, it became a rallying cry. Some said X invented that broken, glitchy sound. Others claimed he was simply the first to push it to extremity. The vocal distortion, lo-fi production, and emotional urgency resonated with a generation disillusioned by polished facades. With Look at Me as the spark, his rise was meteoric. In 2017, he released Revenge mixtape and 17 debut studio album. 17 debuted on the Billboard 200, marking a shift in narrative. He wasn't just angry, he was fragile. He laid bare his depression, suicidal thoughts, heartbreak, trauma. It was radical in rap worlds that often prize machismo. Then came, in 2018, an album that climbed to and mixed emo, rock, rap, and introspection, an audacious evolution. Through it all, X's identity remained volatile, violent and repentant, bitter and hopeful. His lyrics flip from "I'll kill you" to "I hope you survive," from rage to forgiveness, often within one song. His fan connection grew visceral. In interviews and social media, he addressed fans personally, admitted suicidal impulses, and begged them to heal with him. Many saw him as someone not beyond the law or beyond forgiveness, but someone broken, fighting. But that public vulnerability always ran parallel to his darker side. Felony charges, violent altercations, aggressive behavior. He was both product and rebel against the chaos he wrote. By mid-2018, he was no longer underground. He had major label backing, millions streaming his songs, controversies swirling, and momentum building toward what many saw as the next great voice in hip-hop and alternative music. But he carried every wound, every accusation, every battle, and it all converged in the moments that followed in that hospital room. The shadows that followed him. Even before the gunfire, darkness trailed XXXTentacion's name. His meteoric rise wasn't clean. It was haunted by legal battles, abuse allegations, and explosive confessions that refused to stay buried. In October 2016, he was arrested and hit with multiple felony charges: aggravated battery of a pregnant woman, domestic battery by strangulation, false imprisonment, and witness tampering. Those weren't minor accusations. In a disturbing 142-page deposition, Geneva Ayala, his ex-girlfriend, laid out a pattern: slaps, punchings, threats, dragging kitchen tools toward her body, choking, and bounding control. In one scene, she testified that he held her underwater in a bathroom, threatened to cut off her tongue, and smashed clothes hangers across her legs. Then came the secret recording. Around the time of his arrest, an acquaintance recorded a 27-minute tape in which X spoke openly of abusing his ex, stabbing people, and lashing out at those he believed betrayed him. Around the time of his arrest, an acquaintance recorded a 27-minute tape held her underwater in a bathroom, threatened to cut off her tongue, and smashed clothes hangers across her legs. Then came the secret recording. Around the time of his arrest, an acquaintance recorded a 27-minute tape in which X spoke openly of abusing his ex, stabbing people, and lashing out at those he believed betrayed him. The state attorney's office considered it a confession. He discussed violent impulses, his rage, and past stabbings, the kind of statements that echoed the worst of his public persona. Throughout his career, X publicly condemned himself, sometimes apologizing on social media, vowing to donate to domestic violence prevention funds, calling his past insensitive, and looking for atonement. But his public remorse always existed in tension with his unleashed aggression. Some of his phone calls while incarcerated were later released. In them, he mocked the abuse allegations, discussed humiliating posts, and admitted he bashed her face on the internet. Legal proceedings dragged on. At times, Ayala filed affidavits claiming she no longer wished to testify. But prosecutors questioned those statements' legitimacy. The charges themselves were never resolved. His murder in 2018 closed all pending cases. But the darkness never truly ended. Feuds and violence extended beyond personal relationships. Onstage fights, heated disputes with other artists, and rumors of retribution added to his myth. His relationship with Ski Mask the Slump got splintered, and associations with volatile collectives amplified the aura of paranoia. His backstage life was often described as combustible. One spark away from an eruption, these shadows weren't background noise. They became central to how people viewed the footage that later went viral. Watching that hospital clip, many wondered, was this the portrait of a man collapsing under his own violence? Or was it a final reckoning with demons that everyone saw coming? The deeper you dig into these scars, the harder it becomes to separate the myth from the man.
As he grabbed the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired? And whom does he shoot?
The redemption that never came in the months before his death, XXXTentacion began to cast a different image, one haunted by guilt, shaped by apologies, and straining toward meaning beyond the chaos. But whether that turn toward redemption was sincere, symbolic, or simply too late remains one of the most contentious questions in his legacy. His attorney claimed that X was actively trying to resolve his domestic abuse case before he was shot. For the prior 8 months, according to reports, he was absolutely perfect in his behavior, working with legal teams and leaning on relationships to guide him forward. In some public statements, he expressed remorse, asked for patience, and told fans he was evolving, even as his past continued to follow him. But it wasn't just legal wrangling. In interviews and live streams, he spoke of making charity efforts and being more gentle with fans. In one post, he promised a community event in Florida. He invoked a desire to be useful, to guide younger listeners not to repeat his mistakes. Those statements, especially juxtaposed with his previously volatile persona, struck many as a turning point. Still, the contradictions were never far behind. In secret recordings and prison phone calls that later surfaced, X admitted to actions that seemed to undermine his public contrition. In one call, he said, "I already got what I wanted. I already bashed her face on the internet, bruh." He threatened to retaliate when affronted, even while seeking to reshape his narrative. Those same transcripts are often cited by critics who say his redemption arc was half-soaked, raw words, unresolved intentions. Moreover, the legal system itself stifled any full closure. After his death, all charges against him were discharged, not because he proved innocent, but because the case could no longer proceed. That judicial silence left many feeling redemption was neither earned nor denied. It simply evaporated. Yet there are quiet gestures that suggest something deeper was happening. In past confrontations, like the stabbing incident with his former manager Tablez, X later paid medical bills and apologized in private. Friends who knew him later said he wept over his misdeeds, begged for forgiveness, and expressed desperation to control his rage rather than it control him. Mental health records, according to accounts, mentioned therapy, medication, and therapy attempts as he tried to navigate trauma, attachment wounds, and instability. But all these efforts were trailing behind the weight of his past, the extreme allegations, the violence, the public scrutiny, the contradictions. Even when he tried to change, many felt it was a redemption half-written. He was still a man who created and destroyed, whose apologies sat beside threats, whose vulnerability was entwined with violence. In that viral hospital footage, viewers see a body beyond speech, beyond justification. In that stillness lies a haunting question. Did he ever fully believe he could be redeemed, or was redemption always part of the performance? That silence is as loud as any gunshot. By the time of his death, his redemption remained a promise unfulfilled. It's the line that lingers between his life and the viral image that now defines one of our darkest collective curiosities.
If I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy, or they found some sort of answers or resolve in my life.
The legacy and the debate that never ends. The viral hospital footage didn't just shock a moment. It reignited a firestorm over who XXXTentacion was, what he became, and how the world should remember him. Because when death enters the frame, memory fractures into myth, guilt, hope, and fury all at once. Today, 7 years since June 2018, his name still floods headlines, sometimes in praise, often in controversy. His posthumous streaming numbers keep climbing, his music still dominates playlists, and new generations of fans discover his catalog daily. Forbes even noted that 5 years after his death, his influence continued to grow, raising questions about how we immortalize artists whose lives were as conflicted as his. Forbes, yet those numbers carry a weight, a tension between art and atrocity. The Guardian once described his legacy in harsh terms. He will be remembered mostly for the unusually cruel violence he committed on vulnerable people, particularly his ex-girlfriend. Others argue that such a statement reduces a complex life into a simplistic judgment. This debate spills into everyday conversations. Can you separate the artist from the actions? Some fans insist that his emotional openness, singing about depression, trauma, suicidal thoughts, saved lives for people who felt invisible. Others say that creating art doesn't erase harm, especially harm inflicted on those closest to you. In his case, those arguments are tangled across albums, interviews, court filings, and leaked calls. New developments continue to surface. In mid-2025, a notebook from 2015, full of sketches, poetry, and teenage reflections, surfaced online. Verified by his official team, the notebook rekindled conversation. Was this pure Jase before fame, or a red herring in the mythology? Some say it humanizes him, others say it softens the portrait of someone who inflicted pain. The documentary Look at Me, XXXTentacion mined those contradictions. It balances interviews from his mother Cleopatra Bernard and ex-girlfriend Geneva Ayala, and dares viewers to form their own conclusions. The director admitted she didn't want to force redemption, only truth. The legacy then isn't neatly boxed, it's messy. Musically, his influence is undeniable. Rolling Stone summed it up: "We've only begun to understand XXXTentacion's musical legacy. From emo rap to genre blending, he helped shift how young artists express grief, alienation, and vulnerability. But that legacy is inseparable from the darker parts of his story." And finally, the footage that sparked all of this, that pale silence on a hospital bed, stands as a visual anchor in the ongoing conversation. It throws the viewer into the middle of a complicated legacy, one of pain, applause, redemption arcs, and perpetual questions. In that still image, you see the tension. The man man who commanded stages now silenced, and the world left arguing whether what he left mattered and how much it cost. So here it is, the legacy that never ends. The arguments, the love, the anger, they swirl as intense as ever, and there's no definitive answer. All that remains is the footage, the music, the scars, and the audience left to decide. XXXTentacion's final hours and the viral hospital clip expose how fragile truth, justice, and memory really are. The image lingers.